Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to my first speed paint video. My name is Latent Ookami, by most of you know already. That's my trademark that I've been going by for about 12, 13 years. I want to say in advance that I'm sorry for the status of this video. It's not exactly the best. This is a new program for me. I didn't start really getting the hang of the program until further into the video. Okay, also a lot of the video is actually missing. A lot of it actually wasn't videotaped or recorded. I mean, I worked a lot of it offline, especially when this is a commission from my mom and I was on Skype with her a lot in the beginning, so that's why a lot of it's missing. I wish it wasn't, especially for the face. I'm really proud how the face came out and I wanted to show you guys how I did that. But this is a learning experience and I'll know in the future. So let's get started on the video. Obviously this is past the point where I already put down the base color. I already started laying down the shadows for his body structure and for his mane, also some of the highlights for his body as well. I even have the violin mapped out. Here, also if you see a lot of going back and forth, there was a couple of pieces I saw throughout this video that I wasn't able to get erased or I hadn't noticed in time. But if you see it flipping back and forth between YouTube, it's because I'm actually live streaming at the time that these are recorded, so that's where I'm pulling from, and I interact a lot with the people who sit in the chat room and talk to me. I also play music while I'm playing this, because dead air is kind of boring, and nobody wants to sit there and listen to me talk the entire time. At least I wouldn't, so I like to play music. I like listening to it, and it helps me whenever I'm sitting there painting. So if you see any dead mouse time, that's because I'm going back and forth into the chat room, and I apologize. In my next video I'll be more of a fine-tooth comb through it and delete some of those scenes where you just see the mouse just standing there. So here I'm mapping out more of the shadows in between the legs. I wanted it to be extreme between shadows and lights. I wanted to bounce off of his skin. I also didn't want him erotic by any means. I know he's very muscular. The whole basis is that I wanted him to be aesthetically pleasing more so, because as what my mom asked is not so much the aesthetic part, of course, but she wanted a lion and a violin, and she wanted it in the type of style of animals that I like to do with it, which is anthro. So I just translated from lions in nature being extremely muscular. Why wouldn't they, if they were more like humans, be the same way? They'll be more of a bodybuilder type without having probably much to work at. So I'm mapping out more of the shadows, more of the definition, going down through, working into his tail. I also like to point out that yes, I do use references, and everybody should, unless you're a master at doing anatomy and doing that type of thing, which nobody really truly is. I always recommend that you study anatomy, that you study reference pictures in order to translate it into your pictures. You'll just become a better artist. You want something to look proportionate and believable. If he wasn't exactly proportionate like he should have been, he wouldn't be believable. In fact, he wouldn't be easy to look at. Mapping out the shadows in the tail. I wanted the focal light to be more on the left side of the picture shining down, so with this tail moving back, and once I start getting the background, and you'll be able to see how the form falls. more in-depth shadowing into the tail. Laying down the shadows. It's always easier for me to go shadows than into highlights. For our skin, I always try to do a 50% flow and also about 30% opacity whenever it comes to my brushes. You're able to build on the colors more slowly, more evenly. And it'll be easier for the light to transition into the muscle. Make it sharp where you need to, smooth it out where you need to. Working down now into the feet. Some of the reference pictures I want to go over that I went through with is one for a male structure for the abdomen to make sure that his abdominal muscles were portrayed correctly. I also had one for somebody holding a violin to make sure that my proportions looked correctly whenever he was holding the instrument. Also one of a lion to make sure that, you know, where the musculature falls for like feet and stuff and how to translate it in between the actual animal structure to human structure. Laying down the shadows. Bring more up into the stomach. Working more with the highlights here. Now I'm starting to work on the bow. I try to use as minimal layers as possible now, but stuff like this is on a separate layer. So you use the rectangular marquee tool, map it out, fill it with the color that you want, then you're able to switch it around and contort it where you need to, instead of doing it completely by hand. I mean, that's one thing about digital. If you can have a shortcut, then by all means take it. And that is mine whenever it comes to more the regular objects, hard-lined objects, filling in more of the detail that the marquee tool couldn't necessarily have done. Some dead air time. I gotta apologize for that. Now I put it more of a transparent layer simply because so I can see, since the bow layer is on top of his body layer. So you put it transparent, you can see him underneath, then you can delete what you need to on the bow layer. Now I'm working up into the tip of the bow, make it more believable, make it look like the instrument. Now it's for the strings, so I use the segmented marquee tool in order to do that. Zoom out, make it sure that it looks like it should. Some more dead air time. Never a good thing. Working more into the bow. Time to work in the shadows under the strings. Or the shadows. Now for some of the highlights under the bow. Now I'm working into the mane. This is where having them on a couple different layers comes in handy. I know a lot of people are able to work off of just one singular layer. Give them respect. Because you would definitely always have to work completely from the back to the front. You can't switch it up and go to different parts of your picture like I like to do, because for instance, if you work on the bow first before the hair, then whenever you work into the hair, you'll have to go back into the bow and rework it, and just, to me, it's just too much of a hassle. Layers is definitely a digital art convenience. Making it into fine hair. And for hair, I always suggest to have more of a hard brush, not to have, 50% flow. You need to have more of 100% and 100% opacity, because hair doesn't just gradient into nothingness. It's, it's hard. Okay, more of the fine lines, and here I'm switching my brush because it's too much of a fade on the outside of the brush. It's not good for hair. I up the opacity. I mean, you can use that type of brush whenever you're maybe doing shadows for hair onto the skin. That would work really well. Or unless you really want to look like a painterly look, then by all means, do whatever fits you, fits your style. But if you want more of a realistic and less of a painty look, then definitely use a hard brush. Working with some of the dark hair underneath the light hair. I have to admit I wasn't looking too forward to working with the mane, just simply because hair is more of the harder thing to color. It's very tedious, a lot of work. Must be talking in the chat room. I apologize. I transition from sizes, bigger to smaller. Hair, and especially fur, always clumps together. working up into the shadows. Working more into the hair. Okay, this is where it gets obvious that for some reason, somehow, some videos were lost. I don't know, I must have worked on it while not online. So I filled out most of the background. See, there was a glimpse of a YouTube video. But most of the background has been mapped out, the shadows, the highlights. A lot of body work has been done on him, the nails have been done. Now I'm doing the shadowing in between the crevices of his nails, where it usually is dark on lions. Some dead mouse time, I apologize. Working more into the nails. Now I'm actually adding ears. Wouldn't look great without them. Ugh. I was practically adding all the highlights and the shadows all at once. Closer and further detail for the tufts. Adding highlights into the hair. See, I would have completely just edited those sections out. Just, ugh. Adding more shadows. See, I would edit this out as well. Excuse me. More shadows. I actually wish I had all the pieces to this video so I can go step by step through it a lot better, especially when it comes to like the color highlights. Well, I wouldn't say they're highlights, they're more like the shadows, but with the purple that falls onto his body and the fine details in his face and the whiskers and all of it. Now we're working into more of the deep shadows, so it'll build a definite contrast between the highlight bouncing off of his back and the shadow. Creates a lot of depth. Working more into the mane. A lot of fur detail with the midtones. I was using the eyedrop tool so I can pull from the same colors. Keep the coloring consistent. Some dead mouse time, never good. Now I'm working the shadows into his hand. More into his arm. Clean up some of the shadows. More into the shadows, into the bell again. Time to work into the legs. Here we're working more into the abdominals. This is more of the fun part, trying to get them to shadow out correctly, to get them to look real. Adding a lot of highlights, subtle highlights. More highlighting. This is more into the detail work, into the sensitive areas. More subtle, extremely subtle shadowing makes a big difference, especially whenever you start placing like veins, subtle veins in the skin, imperfections and such. Okay, more of the detail work. Very subtle shading makes a huge difference. This part seems to have a lot of dead mouse time, and I apologize for that. Here we actually get to see some purple being added into the skin. Anytime that it's just like any properties with anything, with any objects, is if you're close to a shiny colorful object, the light from the object will bounce the color, of course, onto your skin. So don't be afraid to add color as highlights onto your picture. Here, of course, we're going to use purple since the backdrop cloth is purple itself. Adding more definition to the feet. Adding more definition to the abdomen. A lot more subtle midtones being added in. Adding more definition to the shadows in his back. More shadows being used. A lot of purple variations mixed with the brown is being used. And plus I have the purple shadow on a separate layer. As you can see, I just hidden the purple shadow layer there for a split second. Was trying to figure out a tone good enough to use, because it was looking awfully grainy and splotchy with the color, so I was trying to smooth it all out and get it to blend evenly. More highlights being added to the feet. Shows some detail. Adding an extreme highlight. Working the details into the arms. Now we're working more highlights into the face. More midtones, more shadows. The eyelashes. Working more detail into the nose. Some more highlights where I need it. Adding more highlighted subtle detail up into the nape of the fur. Zooming out and make sure it looks nice. More shadows with more of a purple undertone to it. Evening out the skin tone. Just like all flesh, the thinner it is, the more pink. Like you can see the veins and stuff like on the tips of your knuckles, on your elbows, on your cheeks and stuff. So just like this, I wanted to add a peachy pink undertone to the more sensitive areas like veins and his knuckles and in his fingers. Now I'm working more up into that tuft like I should have. I wasn't really pleased how it was coming out, so. And so I believe I realized I was working on a different layer than the rest of it, which shouldn't have happened. Darkening it up. Grabbing some color from his mane. Now time to add the highlights and midtones. Give it that depth. Adding more detail to the mane. Here I'm adding some color to the veins, normally underneath skin, because truthfully everybody knows, we learn in school, that your blood actually is blue. It doesn't become red until it hits oxygen, so that's why whenever you look at your skin, your veins appear blue. That's what I'm doing, just adding the blue subtly color throughout in his hands, the veins that would show in his arms, especially of course with men, they have more veins protruding through their skin than females necessarily do, or at least it's more obvious. So you'd have them in the veins and in more of his sensitive areas throughout his arms, his legs, such as that. Always want to pay attention to detail. And with the vein type of blue, you always want to go like, it's kind of just a smidgen of violet to it. It's kind of a light color with a touch of gray to it. You always want to lighten it up. You could always put it on another layer and transition it to how you need it to. Because it takes some practice to make it look real and just not like a bunch of blue lines all over your picture. because you'd actually want to try to use it more for the shadow against the vein on one side of it where it would fall, and of course your regular skin highlight tone to the other side. Adding it in his hand. And this is where you want to have a very low opacity and flow. It'll help so you can build up the color slowly and not overdo it. Then you can use a dark skin tone shadow to help complement the blue throughout, make it look a little bit more real. Adding some of the blue to the veins to sensitive areas. And of course, you don't want to forget to add it to his feet. Right here we're adding more detail into the violin. It needed to be cleaned up some. And the shadows to be worked into, especially the highlights. Definitely needed to clean up some of it. Some of the lines, they were a little too sketchy. Here we are making some lighting onto the neck. Needed to add some purple for the shadows. Some extreme highlights. Give it that glossy look. Here's that purple coming into play. adding some extra highlight. Just trying to make it pop.